What was the song that Animal?
Phenomena.
Phenomena.
I love that song.
Yeah, but we can't do it together. It doesn't work that way for some reason.
It's called You Never Know, if I'm not mistaken.
Phenomena.
Oh, shit.
King's got to go to work in like 3 hours or something.
Yeah, we got to start clearing snow tomorrow. So,
did you buy bread and milk?
Do this real quick. I'm gonna go let Will out and then come back and we'll get going.
All right.
Yeah, so whining. We don't need that on the show. There's enough whining already.
I bought liquor and mixers.
Well, it's not allowed to start snowing until everybody gets their bread and milk.
Exactly why I bought liquor and mixers. I'm not stupid.
Yeah, one of my guys got his car totaled last night. He was driving home from the auto parts store. His alternator was bad, and it failed. He coasts over to the side of the road, and car came up behind him and plowed into put the tailgate. Ford Explorer put the tailgate into the back seat.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
he was not in the truck at the time.
He was not in the truck. No, he was standing out away from it, calling the he was calling 911 to tell him, hey, there's my car's in the road, kind of thing, because he couldn't get any further off the road without going into the ditch. Well, a Jeep Cherokee put him in the ditch.
Jeez.
This guy, the guy was a construction worker, had a chop saw or a miter saw that fortunately it went through the passenger side windshield. Otherwise it would have gone through his head.
Yeah, it would have killed him.
Yeah. God. He hit him hard.
Yeah, my stepdad was involved in a head-on collision many years ago at an odd intersection, and he had a toolbox in the back of one of those old hatchback Mustangs that came through and hit the windshield beside his head. It was a pretty heavy box. He was a volunteer firefighter at the time, and that was the one that had all the hoses and fittings and stuff in it for his gear.
Oh, yeah.
That was quite the heavy box.
Yeah.
Phenomena.
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 All right, I'm not doing this by myself.
You weren't. I was my number 9.
Phenomena. Phenomena.
I'm gonna be singing that song all through the show now.
No, 3 days now, to be honest with you.
I think we know how the show ends this week.
It was named. Oh yeah, we'll have to do Phenomena for the ending. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Anyway, what'd you say it was named, Kirby?
You never know.
You never know. Is that what it's supposed to say?
Yep.
Really? He just said
Animal just said Phenomena.
Phenomena.
And how did he start on Sesame Street? That's a Muppet.
That's just Henson in general, I guess. There was a little bit of crossover.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, he played drums.
I don't think he was ever around for like conversation with the guys about ABCs or whatever.
No, I think he was just in that band or whatever kind of thing.
Right. But I can't remember. Yeah.
Cookie.
Animal.
That is a very scary Cookie Monster.
Let me have your cookies. Give me your cookies, little girl. I'll sing you a song.
Make you want to roll your window down.
Gross.
Hey, did you guys hear?
I did.
The band's getting back together. Hootie and the Blowfish.
Yes, I did hear that.
Yeah, they're going to be touring with Bare Naked Ladies.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I like Bare Naked Ladies.
I'd love to tour with Bare Naked Ladies. Oh my God. Thinking on the found it, it's getting, it's going to cause trouble.
The other thing from Sesame Street everybody remembers is the pinball thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
And it's just 2 dog night now, by the way.
Oh man, that Braille joke, Amelia.
Oh God, not that again. Come on, let's go ahead now.
Amelia says, "Takes fist out. Come here. I just want to talk." Josiah says, "Please, no, don't do it, ma'am. I can barely read." Oh, I love that kid.
Takes fist out.
Yeah.
I thought that was going a completely different direction.
Phenomena.
On that bombshell.
Oh man.
God.
Whoa.
Is there a rating on this show?
Well, there wasn't until night.
Right. There's not one there needs to be.
You must be this tall.
Yeah, please let's not do the show like last week where it takes like 3 hours to edit.
Yeah, we got to roll into this.
Yeah, we really do.
We don't need to change the show. You need to change your editing tactic.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Find cat head mute.
You need to lower your bar.
Keep it limbo with us, Bubba.
Oh, all right. Let's do this.
Yep. Here
Awesome.
we go. Phenomena. I ain't wrote in my own 5 seconds. Hello there, folks. Welcome back to Angle of Attack. You found us one more time. This is going to be a good week because we've been sitting in pre-show. Everybody's sitting in the room going, phenomena. And it's awesome. We were, just going through some old Sesame Street stuff, I guess. I don't know how we got on it, but we've been having...
We were reviewing the ABCs.
Yeah, or something. Yes. I'm almost up to like G now. But I do know that Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet, thanks to Rambo. But I do want to say we were having fun in pre-show, and we decided, hey, let's hit the record button and bring in all of our friends, and that's you guys that come to listen live and to download us every week. And we, again, just at the beginning of the show, we want to thank you for supporting us and laughing along with us, and we hope we can make you have to pull over and wipe the tears from your eyes from laughing once more this week. I tell you what, it's a pretty cool show coming up. There's actually some good RC stuff coming along the way, coming down tree. Anyway, so yeah, if you got a lot of switches, or how would Francisco say it?
Hey man, you got some switches?
If you have a lot of switches on your radio, you might want to make sure you listen in a little bit later, and we'll be telling you maybe some cool things that you can do with those switches. That won't get you run out of Target. And then Gravy's going to give us a tip. But before we get all to that, Rambo, why don't you give us a report? Tell us where you're at. And did you go see have you been to a local hobby shop in that area yet?
No. Well, first question is I'm in Burlington, Vermont this week. Well, today, I should say today, I will be going to Fort Lauderdale on, tomorrow night and for Friday. So I'm kind of all over the place. I started my week in Tennessee.
Is that where they meet the coach?
What? Burlington? Oh, yeah. You make a lot of... They make Bigfoots up here. Yeah.
Okay.
Sasquatches.
Gotcha.
No, they do not make coats up here. They make them at a Bangladesh child labor factory.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
Thanks for being a bummer.
He's been there too, but he just can't.
Get an email from Burlington Coat Factory. I'm giving them Ronbos.
Right. So, no, I looked up some local hobby shops here, and unfortunately, there's not one that was close enough for me to get to tonight because I just arrived last night too late to get to a hobby shop.
Yeah.
But I was not able to get to one today. Probably won't be able to get to the one that I found online tomorrow because my flight's at 4:10 p.m. And it doesn't look like I'll get to go to any this week. But I did run into 2 people this week, customers of mine. Actually, one's a customer, and one is an engineer from a fellow surface mount technology provider. works for a company that probably everybody's heard of, called Panasonic. They have just recently, both of them started flying drones, quadcopters, DJIs. One's got an Inspire, one's got a Mavic Pro 2. And the one with the Pro 2, which I'm working with today and tomorrow, has just started flying. And he says, I've only hovered it in my living room and I actually hit the speaker. And I'm like, no, don't. I know it's snowing outside, but take that thing out the yard. Don't hover it in your house.
At least into the garage or something.
Yeah.
Without cars.
Yeah, because I told him, I said, you need to go find this video on YouTube where I want to say he's an older gentleman. I didn't really see his face. Maybe you guys have seen it where he flew his Phantom into his arm.
Ouch, no.
And he landed it. And when he knelt down in front of the camera, you could see the blood draining out of his arm on the camera. I was like, that's going to need stitches.
That's going to need stitches.
Stitches. So I have not got, long story short, haven't got to any local hobby shops here in the last couple of weeks. I had a little interesting thing happen to me this weekend. Okay, it was a nice day in central Alabama, and so I charged up my battery packs, which I hate to say, to fly my 5-inch quad. I hadn't charged up in about 4 months, but I did storage charge them. Okay, so roughly end of July, they've been sitting on storage charge, not on charge, but in a storage state. And they're my 4 oldest packs that I picked up. I think I started flying them last January. And I can't tell you for sure how many charge cycles I have on these guys. They're Tattoo 1550, 4S 1550 packs, the 75C versions. So I charge all 4 of them up. I take them out to fly, and all was looking good until I do a punch out on the first one and get the whoop whoop low battery warning. It's like, whoa, this isn't good. I've just been in the air maybe 20, 30 seconds. Throttle back, and it's flying around at part throttle okay. And fly it for maybe 2 minutes, come back, land. Anyway, I go through all 4 packs. They all did the same thing. So I have 4 non-flyable but are good for something else batteries, 4S batteries that have gone south. The chemistry's gone south in them, and it's maybe from not flying them. I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss because I did put them on storage charge or bring them up to storage.
And it had been, what'd you say, 4 months or so?
Yeah.
And they can't be that old because Tattoo ain't been out too terrible. I mean,
no, I picked them up, like I said, last January, and I started flying them not soon after that. So maybe 30, 40 charge cycles on them.
But those are the graphite. Am I correct?
Graphene? No, I don't. Well, I don't know. Tim, do you know if they're graphene?
I thought the Tattoo batteries were graphene.
I thought they were too.
They might be.
But I thought they were.
Yeah. Well, anyway, these are not flyable for what I want to do with them. They're good for something, charging cell phones.
Yeah.
But
which ones are they, Ron? The Tattoo? They're not the R line Tattoo?
No, they're not the R line. They're the 75C 4S 1550s.
Okay.
I have 2.
Strange. I have just heard nothing but good things about those. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
You had some give up on you.
I did. And I've got 2 more that I didn't. I just ran out of daylight to fly on Sunday afternoon to go back in and charge. I didn't.
Were you able to fly another battery on that same setup? I'm wondering if you have maybe a sensor.
No, I mean it's basically telemetry from the receiver back down to the transmitter, and I've got it set up.
Something telling you what the amperage is. So.
Yeah, I don't have a current sensor on that quad.
It sounds like it's a voltage sag when he punches it.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's voltage sag, and it's like they were fully charged when I went out, and they looked up, they charged up just fine. On the I have an ISDT T8. I parallel charge them. They charged up fine. Got to 4.2 volts per cell, and within 45 minutes. I don't charge my batteries, especially when I have time. I don't like to tax them. Or push them too hard when I've got plenty of time to charge.
Sure.
It wasn't like I was, racing the sun. It was early afternoon that I charged them, knowing that the sun was going to be setting around 4:30ish. So anyway,
I don't think any doubting that you took care of it, that they were well managed.
Yeah, they weren't abused, and I don't fly them too long. I fly them for about 3.5 minutes. And anyway, I've got 2 more that I picked up in May, right before Joe Nall. So I'm going to go home this weekend if the weather's permitting. I don't think it's going to be, because we have a big weather system moving through the U.S. this week, dropping snow and rain and crap all over everybody again. But I've got 2 more just like that. I call them my B stock. So I group my batteries so I keep them together so I know when I purchased them. These, like I said, my A stock, the 4 were the oldest, and I have 2 of my B series that I'm going to charge up and see how they fare.
Yeah.
See if they last, because they were all charged the same, put on storage when I got back out on the road. And I don't know, maybe it's just from not using them. I mean,
That may be.
Yeah, I would try cycling them. With you got a PL6 or something, right?
No, I don't have a Power Labs. I'm not that rich.
Oh, give me a break.
What?
No, all I have is the ISDT T8. So
okay,
and I don't know.
Well,
you think they'd come back?
It might.
I've seen stranger things.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely worth a try without just throwing it out.
Right. And I wouldn't throw them out. I definitely want to put them back on the charger and see what I put back in. How many milliamps? Because I know they only have a couple of minutes per flight.
Right.
And they weren't hard, because every time I would do a punch out to get above the trees, get the whoop whoop low voltage warning. It's like crap. So, and when the 4th one did, I was like, it's time to land and go back inside.
Yep.
It's time for some new batteries, seems like.
I'll be interested to hear about the other 2 that you have, to kind of see what the comparison is.
Yeah.
And like we said, don't be scared to at least try to cycle them. Take them down and try to bring them back up and see what happens. Because, and actually, I'm going to let that lead us right into this week's tip. You can't be scared to at least try to fix things. It's already broken, right?
Right.
I'm not suggesting that you cut it open and see what the problem is.
Gravy?
There are a couple things you can try to do to fix it. And Gravy was talking earlier about fixing different things and even the switches that we're going to talk about later, whether it be on your radio or your aircraft or whatever your hobby may be. So here's Gravy with this week's Just the Tip.
To start with, not even I can recommend that you cut into your batteries and go to working on those. I guess the first part of the tip will be know what you should and shouldn't work on. To the serious and a little more prepared point, I did want to talk about getting into things you may not know exactly how to get into. For example, if you wanted to open your remote control, I imagine most of us have probably done plenty of that as we were kids. It's just, have you kept up with the skills as an adult? The one thing I want to point out as far as products might go, there's a company called iFixit. I've mentioned them a time or 2. They make wonderful little tools. If you need small bits, especially if you need strange stuff for your radio, you probably won't. Most of the time, you're going to see Philips, stuff like that. But iFixit is good for if you want to fix your telephone or something like that. They've got breakdown charts, all the kind of stuff you could need for modern consumer products. Electronics, there's a lot of that stuff on there. If that's not available, you're breaking down your radio and you want to take it apart, it's really important that you do a few things. One of the things I always do is start taking pictures immediately. So it's good to take pictures of the radio before you take it apart. And pretty much every time you take something off, take a picture before you take it apart, before you take that part off, of how the wires were lined up, when they plugged into a particular piece, those kinds of things, where screws went. That's another thing to keep up with. I've known people to draw a little sketch of what they're taking apart and put the screws in the area they came from, on the radio, on the sketch kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be helpful. They have magnetic maps for that kind of thing too these days. And the other thing is, when you're taking something apart, be very careful to pay attention to where wires are as you open it. Pick it up and look at it get it up in your face if you have to, but be careful as you take it apart that you don't pull any wires loose in doing that. Not everybody takes time to consider how it'll come back apart. If it's not really meant to be taken apart, they don't think about it. So you get some weird stuff. And then if you do work and you're going to put it back together, take that in mind that you may have to take it apart again one day and add extra length of wire and that sort of thing. So that combination of information should hopefully help you out should you decide you want to try to fix something instead of throwing it away or buying a new one or making somebody else do it. You'd be surprised what you can do. That's just a tip.
Yeah, I think that's a very good tip. Very well laid out. I think patience is the biggest thing when you are taking something apart like that. Take your time. You're exactly right. Don't just, go at it with a flathead screwdriver and a Dremel, or whatever. Right. Take your time and realize how you take it apart, and not only that, but where all your wires are, the complete picture. So yeah, and those are things we've learned over years.
I learned a lot about it when I was fixing classic video game consoles in a previous hobby. And doing it that way was fun because you got to see the way people change their habits over decades. Like the companies that produce these cases, for example, that the electronics are in, what you see of the console, changed where they put screws or how they would use different kinds of fasteners and clips and things through the decades. It was really neat to kind of watch that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and even the interesting stuff that you learn when you dig into a classic NES cartridge, that there's not as much in that cartridge as you think.
At most it's half full.
Right, and you're like, well, what in the world? And honestly, they made stuff a lot more rugged back then, and I think that's why they made stuff a little bit bigger because they realized who was going to be handling it, and
as you go to taking stuff apart. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Also allowed for I guess room for advances, because there are video game cartridges out there that are a lot more full than your normal. They got the batteries and whatever stuff in them. So.
Yeah, it's hard to know which way that goes. Did they use it because they had it, or did they think of it ahead of time?
Right.
Depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
As you go through taking things apart, just keep a mental note of little things, and you kind of can't help it. Your brain will just go, "Oh, I've seen this before."
Yeah.
Because that kind of design doesn't change super often because you don't have to look at it, so it doesn't have to be pretty. It's mostly functional.
Yep, and use that camera on your phone, man. That has saved my bacon minute. Oh, I can't say bacon anymore. That has saved my.
Yes, you can.
Carrot.
Well, you can say it saved your bacon.
Okay. That has saved my carrot stalk many. What do you? Anyway,
say bacon, please.
Being able to go back to that has definitely helped me. Even with the wires that screws and everything else.
Of all the things I mentioned, that's the more important.
Yeah, and there's no sense in not using it because there's been many times I was sketching something out like you said, and I went, "Why am I doing this?" You grab your phone and go, "Boop." No more sketches. It's right there. You can look at it in detail.
I know you and I both grew up fixing stuff before you could take a picture of it. I mean,
no doubt.
Take a picture and then go beg mama for money to have this thing developed, man. I'm trying to eat next week.
That's right.
So, but now that it's on your phone, I mean, it's kind of, there's a whole nother level of things that the phone have made it possible for people to do you don't pay attention to. And that's one of them. Sure. If you think about your phone as a way to document what you may or may not have messed up, I got a lot braver. I was like, I don't know if this is going to fix the problem with my car or not, but guys, if you pay attention, I don't know nothing about cars.
You'll find out real quick how good you are when you're working on your phone.
Yeah. I would not recommend fixing a modern telephone, iPad, that kind of thing.
No.
Unless you are very, very, very comfortable with it. It is quite the beast.
Leave that to the professionals.
Yes.
Yeah,
especially now that you can get it done in the mall, there's no point.
Yeah, exactly.
Except
while you wait,
money instead of the mall.
Shop.
Anyway. Oh, that was awesome. And I've always enjoyed not only tearing things apart, but putting them back together. And what did Tim Allen always say? Tweak
more power.
but tweaking it a little bit. I'm sure this washer can spin faster. So,
but what I've always found interesting about that though is how many absolutely useless parts they design into those things from the start.
Yeah, there's just extra stuff all
Yeah, I
the time.
put stuff back together all the time, and I got a ton of stuff left over.
No doubt.
And I mean, why do they put all that stuff in there?
And it still works.
Yeah.
Better, it's in some instances. So.
Well, they will put needless stuff in there now. You find weight and stuff sometimes to make it heavier. Like they found that with those Beats headphones, they would put weight in them to make them feel heavier, so people would think they were more quality.
Higher in quality, right? Well, I mean, and speaking of putting things in there that I've never understood really why I have so many switches on my radio because I don't use them all. And I know that's something. We do have a special guest tonight along with us, and many of you, it's been a while since we talked to him. But I just want to get Francisco in here right quick and let him, talk about maybe how many parts he's got on his radio and all the switches right quick. And then we'll get to Nav and, we'll get on to the show topic. But how are you doing, Francisco?
Hey, man. So you all know, man, like, my thing for years has been like 16 switches, man. No, man, I doubled that now. I run 32 switches.
What?
Orderly.
32 switches, man. Because I'm going to tell you, you can have everything on a switch, man. Everything.
All right, well, real quick, give us a rundown of maybe your top 5 switches, what you would. Not just RC, but on everything.
My top 5 switches. So the number 1 switch on everything is the on switch.
Okay, that's a good one. You got to have an on switch.
That's the first switch I hit on everything, man. Everything.
Very, very good, Fran. So number 2, what would your number 2 switch be?
That would be the one that turns on the pumps, man. It's another on switch, but it's for the pumps.
That's the second on switch.
Yeah, so you have. Well, he might have a row of them in his car, right? He's got to hit all those on switches.
I'm seeing a connection here.
Yeah, so
it's like an interlock, man. All right, so number three, pretty important, man. Number 3 is the bounce switch.
Okay. So I'm assuming we're talking about your Broham or whatever.
No, man, we're talking about everything, man. My planes, my cars, man. They all got a switch to go bounce.
Oh, okay. All right. I understand. All right.
All right. So number 4, man. Number 4 is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is the switch that makes I can't say it on the show, man, because y'all got the rating and everything, but let's just say it makes the ladies happy.
Okay. Yes, that'll work. I think I've seen some of those. Yeah.
And then the number 5 switch is super important, man, because all these other switches, man, sometimes they screw up, so you got to have an off switch.
Oh, like a main off turns everything off.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
It's an off switch. You hit it, man. It just stops.
I really didn't think you'd have an off switch. I mean, because it's always been go.
Well, man, my motto has always been more switches, but safety first.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, we'll talk to you later about maybe some of the switches you have on your radios and stuff. But there's Francisco for you. And what about you, Nav? You got any favorite switches or switch stories? Maybe I don't know. How are you doing, Nav?
I'm doing good. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, actually, one of the cool things you can do with like a Tyrannus is to put.
No, I was just talking about like what you've been up to, man. We'll get to that.
All right. You asked me about switches, man.
I know.
Okay.
You should have had an anti-deer switch.
I should have had an anti-deer switch. Yeah,
Tell us about your fun afternoon.
We got a bit of a late start tonight, actually, because I was about 1.5 miles from home, and a deer decided it needed to cross the street while I was driving through that same space. So
he decided to murder a helpless deer in its natural habitat.
I know, right?
Yeah. Murder is probably pretty strong of a word because it ran off.
Well, a deer and a Honda cannot occupy the same space and time.
What kind of car are you driving?
It's a Lexus.
Are you serious? You hit the Lexus and the deer run off?
Yeah.
Attempted deer slaughter.
That did not
fly, so it was. Yeah.
Well,
he was going slow.
In the Lexus's defense, I did slam on the brakes and steer around it, and I caught it with the right side of the passenger side front bumper. So this is the first time I've actually hit a deer. I had a deer hit me in Michigan once. It ran right into the side of my car. I can't even explain that one. It just lowered its head. And,
Oh no, I've had it happen.
Yep.
It's happened to a minivan that was in front of me at about 55 miles an hour. I was
Yep.
like, oh, look at that doe. Here she comes. Oh, and she hit the side of the minivan and she spun like a top.
Yeah.
It was crazy. All four legs out and she was spinning like a top. Gets up and runs off the highway. I'm like,
Yep.
I
Rumbo
couldn't
jumps
make
out the
that
car
up.
with a 9.
Yep.
Uh,
So anyway, no, that it ran off, and
Judged.
I don't know how much damage. I was able to drive it home and stuff, but it took a while for the police to get there to do their police report. And he told me that they'd had another deer incident in this same area about an hour before mine.
that was a suicidal deer.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, I'm figuring that. Yeah.
Take one keeps running across the
There
road.
needs to be a deer Kevorkian.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my fun for today. Didn't get out flying. I thought I was gonna go out flying Sunday. It was my birthday, and it was raining here pretty bad, but Tim King and Fancy Picker got out and flew.
Yep.
I guess it was a little nicer over there or something, because it was pretty blah for most of the day.
Let's move right on over to Mr. King, the last but not least, and see what kind of stuff he did flying with Panty Flicker this weekend.
Yeah, we the forecast was looking beautiful. I mean, I'm talking about, it was one of these, you looked at it, and it's like 70 degrees, on a December Sunday, it's time to go fly. We did have rain, Saturday night, but everything was saying that it would move out mid-morning. Well, I got up pretty early Sunday morning, loaded the truck, and took off to the field thinking, okay, yeah, it'll be all right. This stuff's going to blow out. I got there. No, it didn't blow out. The fog opened up, and that's the best way to put it, briefly several times throughout the day. But it did open up enough that we could get some stuff in the air. Lee was there, Craig was there, and I was there, and we had a really good time actually. Put the one of Crash's pizza box flyers, put it in the air, and
nice.
Boy, that was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
that was a whole lot of fun, because this particular pizza
never
box,
flown one, never had the sticks on one, but I've seen them, and it's just,
well, I'll be honest, it's been
nutballish fun. You know what I mean?
It's been years since I've flown a nitro PBF. I've flown.
Oh, it was nitro.
Yeah, it's nitro. Plenty of electric PBFs.
That is awesome.
So yeah, it's been years since I've flown a nitro one, and this one doesn't have a rudder on it. It is just straight 3-channel elevons and throttle. So it was really interesting flying it around in a high alpha. And I actually commented to Lee while we were out there flying, and I said, I'm having to remember to use engine torque to get this thing to do what I want, because if you fly high alpha, rudder is how you steer. Well, you
gotta know what engine was on this thing though.
It's got a Magnum 15 on it. This is a small PBF.
Oh, ain't it cute?
Yeah, it's a little bitty one. So, and it actually did quite well. Did the first flight on it, and needed to lean it out a little bit, and brought it around and got it back on the ground, leaned on it a little bit, and put it back up again. And then actually the way that worked out was I leaned it. We stepped over to the shelter because it started mist and rain again. So we put the planes out of the rain. We got the radios up, went over to the shelter. We may have committed some 2A type things. We may have flown some other things at high rates of speed towards pieces of steel, and enjoyed the heck out of that. And then, the sky parted for a split second. We saw a little bit of sun, and it quit raining. And so Lee went out, and I got to mention, this particular PBF is Coroplast. And Lee had brought a Coroplast 3D plane with him. And so he went out to fly it, and I cranked up the PBF and tossed it out, and Craig went up, and he was flying FPV. And so it was funny, because as soon as I got in the air and I came around and kind of got in the pattern with Lee, he was dragging the ground since he had a rudder, and I was above him by about maybe 15 feet, a little less maybe. And we were just harrying down the runway, and he commented that it finally sounded like a flying field again, because there's 2 sets of glow motors out there, and then here comes Craig whizzing by at like 85 miles an hour.
Right. Yeah,
dude, we were having a blast though. But yeah, it was that was a lot of fun. So I got to fly that a little bit, and it will have a rudder by the time next time I go out there. I'm gonna modify the vertical, so I've got a rudder on it. But
sure.
Also took out several of you may have seen the post on Facebook of the 5150 Cadet, as it has been dubbed. That actually was a club trainer and it's actually a World Models Super Frontier, which for those that don't know, World Models did a lot of the R4 SIG, and this was basically they sold their house brand of a SIG Cadet Senior.
Gotcha.
So it's seen quite a bit of use. So I stripped all the covering off of it. And
I've seen World Models out there. I didn't know they made the R SIG for.
Well, they did some of them. They didn't. There's other companies, but this particular plane had seen some use. Like I say, it was a club trainer, and so it needed some love. So I stripped it down, and boy, that was an experience. We could go into a whole show about what it took to get that old factory heat shrink covering off of there and get surface ready.
I can only imagine. How old is this thing?
Oh gosh. Well, this one's the wire gear version. I'm gonna guess that this one's a solid 10 to 12 years old, if not maybe a little bit older.
So it was really sticky.
Yeah, it was really bad.
And put it on with Elmer's or something.
Exactly. And so, that's what I did over Thanksgiving was get that thing ready. So I got it all ready. Anyway, got it out there, and Lee was kind enough to it has an engine on it that he loaned the club to use, and he was kind enough to say, keep that engine on there, run it for a while till you find you something you're going to put on it. It happens to have a Sato 72 on it, which is just about right in the power department. Nice, powerful 4-stroke. So it had been run recently, so it was a real simple matter to we put the glow igniter on it, fueled it up, hit it with a starter, and it lit right off, and got it in the air, and it flies just like a Cadet. I mean, you can't ask for if you've never flown one, you're missing out, because it's a real gentle plane, but with that little bit of extra power on the nose when you nail the throttle, it Cadets don't get fast. They just do it with authority. They go wherever they're going with a lot more authority when they've got more power. So the vertical climbs were pretty solid. Excuse me, Sato 82. I don't know why I had 72 on the brain. I just got corrected. Sorry about that, Lee. Anyway, it pulls vertical really nicely. And of course, in true Cadet fashion, the rudder is way more effective than the ailerons. And it's just so much fun to fly. I mean, we were kicking around at just a smidge over idle, and it's just pulling along beautifully. And then, you go up to a stall turn with it and come back down. And when you pull the throttle out, it just tick, 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 tick as it goes flying by you. So had a lot of fun with that. And then we discovered that, that best I can tell, it's got a 6-ounce tank in it because the fun didn't last long enough. So that's one thing I'm going to change. But yeah, we had a really good time. So the weather never broke. We never saw the sunshine, and it was progressively getting colder. But yeah, in between the mist and the fog, there was one point flying the Cadet that the fog rolled in tight enough that when I flew to the edges of the field, to the the runway, that the plane would disappear in the fog when I turned vertical for the stall turn, which was kind of cool because you could just barely make out the outline, and then it would come back into view. So yeah,
that does sound awesome. I've flown. I don't know. The pleasure or the unfortunate circumstance of flying in the fog a few times. And you can tell sometimes it's very difficult to tell how far the fog is.
Yeah.
You think it's, way on the other side of that field or, by that tree line or whatever. And next thing you know, there, you don't have a plane.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just please fly level. Okay. There it is.
Yeah.
Because if you've never, and it's not like glancing away, or looking at your radio, which you should never do, or, glancing at somebody down on the flight line or whatever, where your plane is, for that second that you look away where it's going to be after that.
Right. Until it hits the fog.
Well, but that's what my point is. When it hits that fog, your brain just shuts down and you go into panic mode. You know where it's going to be when it comes out the other side, or you should anyway. But your brain just panics. I can't see my ground. I can't, and yeah.
Yeah, you have to fly by sound at that point.
There's definitely a pucker effect there. That's for sure.
Well, and Craig brought out a little SE5, and that thing, and he threw it up in chat, and that jogged my memory too. It looked 100% scale in the fog that we had.
He brought out a what?
A little SE5 British Bipe.
Yep.
And, dude, that thing coming back. Oh man, flying it in the fog was just perfect because you could get it just in that what I call the transition zone, where there's just enough mist between you and the plane that you can still make it out really well.
Right.
But it, it looks right.
It just has the,
exactly. So yeah, he was flying that thing and having a ball with it. It looked beautiful up there. So,
yeah. That's generally when one of us down here, at Arcola headquarters would they get your phone, I'm gonna do that again.
Yep.
Because it just looks just a picture, or whatever, and
Exactly.
it looks so real. Because actually, I don't have them anymore. I wish I did, but I lost the phone died on me. But I had some on my phone of some stuff that we had flown, and I want to say one of them was Dry Fit's F4U, and maybe even Gravy's. What'd you have, Gravy or Razorback?
Yeah.
Flying. Yeah, the P-47. And it just hitting it just right with the clouds and whatever, and you snap that picture, and you don't have that aircraft doesn't have to have that much detail.
Yeah, to look good.
Yeah, right. It has to have that 100-yard detail, right?
Right.
And looking at the picture, you're like, well, what air show were you at?
Exactly.
And I love it when that stuff comes together like that, and it just looks so real, so real.
Yep.
Because I found myself doing that itself a couple of times with special, was it Chief Special K?
Mm-hmm.
His big airliners that he'd make out of
no, that's KFC.
That's KFC.
KFC, that's what it was. Would make the big airliners, and you see that thing in the air, and you catch yourself almost with a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? The like when you stand on top of a mountain and you kind of look over. Vertigo. Thank you. You almost with a little vertigo because your brain keeps wanting to make it. What you see feels real, but your brain keeps telling you that it's fake. And you kind of get caught, or my brain does anyway.
It tricks you, yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
Is that a model close to me or a real airplane far away?
Right. Yeah. In your brain,
especially when it's an airliner, you don't really see those fly close to you, so it.
Yeah. But and there's some letting yourself get wrapped up in it too. You got to kind of let yourself, be fooled and be a kid again and not be scared to look up in the sky and have fun and use your imagination a little bit.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that during all this fun that we were having this weekend, that Lee and I successfully enabled Craig to make his first nitro purchase. There's another SIG Cadet Senior. This one actually is a SIG Cadet Senior stick built that's in the club shack right now in the clubhouse there that belongs to another member who had mentioned selling the plane. And so we kind of egged Craig on a little bit and told him he needed to reach out to the owner and see if he was still interested in selling it and see if they could come to an agreement on an appropriate price. Well, Craig did that. They have come to an agreement on an appropriate price. So it won't be too long before Craig has a true 3-channel SIG Cadet Senior with a 52 4-stroke on it. So yeah, we're gonna have some fun because Lee has got the new club trainer, which is a Telemaster, which also is going to have 4-stroke power on it. So it won't be too long before we're out there doing 3-ship touch and goes and all that's we've talked about that before. All the quote unquote stupid trainer tricks, all the fun stuff you can do, you can still have with the trainer. Yeah,
that's where my hobby is, and it will forever live.
Yeah, it won't be too long before we're out there just ticking away with the sound of multiple 4-strokes, just having a good time on the runway. So
see, that's the thing, man. I have always wanted to put a Sato 4-stroke in my I guess repertoire of engines. It's one of them I don't have. I've always wanted a Sato. It's just one that I knew of way back when, and it kind of stuck with me, and even back then I was like, man, I wish I could have one of those, afford that sound,
Yeah.
But yep, that's always one I wanted to be able to get my hands on, and I will eventually. I'll find one somewhere and pick it up for a good deal. Yep, and honestly, if I was gonna put a nitro engine on something, it would be, a Telemaster or something of that effect. Anyway, just a good gentle trainer.
Yeah, something you can
have fun with.
Still have a lot of fun with. So.
Yeah, well, it's something that when my motor cuts off or my engine cuts off, because it will.
Well, and
I tuned it. And
to that effect, I actually did have 2 dead sticks this weekend, and that was the first time chalked it up to okay, yeah, maybe it's because it hadn't been running a while. It was really rich, and of course all the scenarios when you have a dead stick, all the scenarios go through your head. It's like, okay, did it get hot? What happened if I got a problem with the fuel tank? And Lee and I both were on the same page. We were thinking, okay, it's fuel delivery problem. There's probably either the clunk is all the way forward in the tank and is up above the midline of the tank, or maybe there's a pinhole in the line. you know, and when the fuel gets down to a certain point, it starts sucking air, because the second time it did that, we heard it go lean immediately before it shut off.
Yeah. And it's funny how all that runs through your mind before you even turn for your downline.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, it's not running. What happened?
Exactly. You start thinking about what happened, because, you know, at that point it's like, okay, well, flying, it's second nature by now, so it's not a panic thing. But, you know, but yeah, it's
oh no, I panic when I land under power.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I'm gonna throw this in real quick. Lee dug up the link and threw it in chat, so we're gonna put it in show notes. We were talking about Coroplast planes, so the spadtothebone.net free plans link will be in the show notes.
Yep.
You know, so if you're interested in building something outside of foam, you know, and you can do spads that are electric too, but there's a lot of cool designs on there that can be easily adapted. But Coroplast is cheap. All you gotta do is find a sign company. I think Lee was telling us this weekend there's a place that he gets Coroplast in 4x8 sheets for $13 a sheet, and that's for the good 5mm thick. You know, 4x8 sheet of Coroplast will build you a lot of stuff.
So. Yeah, no kidding.
Well, Fancy Picker said in the chat that it looked like that maybe Francisco was doing the dead sticks because it kind of bounced all the way down the runway.
The second one did. I will admit it. The second dead stick, yeah, it had hydraulics on it. The first one was stretching, because we do have a fence that runs parallel to a road that was concerned about making it over based on where I ran out of fuel at.
Right. Yeah.
So that one, I greased the heck out of that one, because everything on that one was okay. We're going to maximize our glide ratio, so everything was perfect.
Yep.
The second one, the second one bounced. I'll admit it. I came in a little hot because it was where it was at, and you know where I was at when it ran out. I was like, okay, I can just go ahead and put this thing on the ground. And I failed to remember one of the most important features of a cadet is they will float forever. And I tried to force it down, and I shouldn't have done that, because they'll bounce when you do that. But.
All right. Well, here's the interesting thing. Actually, in the chat, Fancy Picker said Tim slicked both dead sticks, but I felt a disturbance in the force, and I knew there was something to be told about one of them, and it was the second one you bounced.
Yeah, the second one I bounced it.
I knew there was something going on there.
But you know what's cool about that? About bouncing a train. Now, in all seriousness, bouncing a trainer on landing, you can actually, after you do it a time or two, you can actually make them look like touch and goes.
Well, it's not dead stick.
Well, if it's not dead stick, you can.
Yeah, right. It depends on if you get the prop or not.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing.
Touch and stops. They kind of
touch
and then.
well, Nav, we would log that as 2 landings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, landing so nice he did it twice.
Exactly.
Right.
You do it 3 times and you're current. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I thought about earlier when you were telling that story, which is awesome. But what was the first one you were flying?
The first one was the pizza box flyer.
No, it wasn't the Telemaster. It was the
cadet.
Cadet. Thank you. My brain things. You know.
Yeah. Super senior.
So, but you said the rudder was a lot more powerful on it than the ailerons.
Yes.
All right, so and I'm going to use that to kind of lead us in a little bit to our show topic. Would that be a aircraft that you could set up on like a switch to kind of make it a little more what's the word I'm looking for, when you
balance out your controls,
you coordinate your turns?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
You maybe not even a switch, but kind of put the ailerons and hook them together with the
yeah, you can mix that. That particular airplane you don't need to do that on,
right?
But it'd be the perfect example to start trying learning how to use mixes and how to program mixes on your radio, because it is so forgiving.
And then you get a good point there, because when you start learning to do stuff like that and you start trying to assign stuff together, please, first thing you need to learn is how to assign it to a switch.
Yes.
Because you can turn it on and then you can turn it off.
Yes. Turning it off can be very important when you're first starting out. Even after you start, you know how to set up your mixes.
Huge, yeah. I mean,
until you get your ratios right, you need to be able to shut that son of a gun off, because something will go wrong.
You get it up to 87 mistakes high, which is where I try to fly, and
about 23 feet.
Right. You flip that switch and you see, first off, what happens? Does the attitude of the aircraft change immediately when I flip the switch, and you get to find out whether what you tried to do actually works or not. And if it doesn't, something goes completely haywire, you can always turn it back off. So going into the show topic with, different things you can do with switches, I would think that'd be one of the number one things that you should learn is to be able to, fly your aircraft normally. And then, when you go to experiment and start moving toward different things in the hobby, put it on a switch where you can turn it on and off, just like a high rate or, all kind of things. So, Nav, what would another one be that you would put on a switch that most people, may not even think about?
Well, with the Turnigy, or Turnigy.
Okay, we're going to go back and edit that part out. With the floppy fling stuff that I fly.
Yeah, with the Tyrannus.
Nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the Turnigy stuff.
Yeah. With the Tyrannus, it's kind of cool because you get the telemetry built into a lot of the receivers. And so you can, especially on a momentary switch, it's great. You can just flip your momentary switch and have it read off your battery voltage.
Well, and just to be the dumb guy on the show that I've perfected doing, I didn't have to try real hard. What's the momentary switch? That's the one that springs back, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of radios have that as a trainer switch.
Right.
Where you hold that switch down.
Yep.
Okay. So it goes back to its neutral position.
Right. Exactly. And you could set it so that you flip the switch and it reads it to you, and then you flip it back and it stops reading it to you. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You can do that. If you have the altimeter or anything like that, you can get that set up.
Well, I figured the
all kinds of telemetry stuff.
I figured the Tyrannus just read your brain waves and knew what you wanted to know.
That's coming.
That's coming. That's I think in 2019 and maybe late 2019, maybe early 2020.
Actually, that's the firmware update I just got for the Horus. It's doing that for me now, which is
okay.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So that's a good one too. Well, what about Rumbo? What you got, man? I know you've got you're the super duper quad guy. What kind of a switch?
I wouldn't say I'm super duper quad guy. I'm still learning, but
good. You should be always.
Favorite switch would be pitot heat, and no, I'm just kidding. No, I have on my momentary switch, and you're right, that's the trainer switch on pretty much every radio out there. I have the timer reset. So at the beginning of the flight, when I lift off, I reach up there with my right index finger and flip it back, and she goes, reset, because I have the Amber Pack installed. So it resets the timer back to what I have it set for that particular model. I've learned that especially on the models that don't have telemetry that Nav alluded to, because not all receivers have that. You want to keep track of the time that you're in the air, and a countdown timer, it works really well for that. But for the 5-inch stuff with any model with a telemetry equipped receiver, I would much rather have that thing barking at me, just like as I alluded to before when I flew my not so wonderful battery packs. I get a low voltage at a specific voltage, and then 2.2 volts below that, I get almost like a whoop whoop sound. It's a sound effect, and that one came with the Tyrannus or the Horus, the X10. So and that means it's really low, and that's a critical alarm. So, but I like the sound effects in the telemetry, but switch wise, I mean, I haven't even got into tenth of the switch using the switches that are on that radio.
Yeah.
On a quadcopter, there's not much you can do with it. Now on fixed wing, there are a lot of things you can do with it.
Sure.
You got the sliders, you got the switches. As Nav was talking about, you get a variometer. You could bark the altitude out at you.
I thought those sliders were like fidget spinners. They were just something to keep me busy.
No. Actually, something that I read recently, you can use one of the sliders on the Tyrannus as a trim. Mm-hmm. So you know how the 9303s have the throttle has an
an
actual
analog.
slider analog trim, so you can put the trim all the way to the top when you start it, and you set your idle, and then when you pull it back, it kills the engine, right?
Yep.
You can do the same thing with the Taranis with one of your sliders on the side.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
okay.
I see what you're saying.
That was that was an ingenious thing, and I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's really good.
I don't even know if my radio, because I have seen radios, which I guess I remember thinking this when I saw them, that have digital trims on a rudder aileron and elevator, and still analog trim
Mm-hmm.
on the throttle. And
for flying the wet fuel, that's very important.
right, and that's the thing. A lot of people that are flying now would have no idea. They're like, why is this one different? They screwed up making it. No, it's there for a reason, and it's pretty cool that I was old school enough to know what the reason was.
Yeah.
It's
I recently set up a rotary knob or potentiometer on the radio following Joshua Bardwell's online tutorial on this Horus and turned it into a volume knob.
Mm-hmm.
Just an overall system volume knob. It's actually pretty cool. So a radio that talks to you now has a volume control, so you can turn her down or turn her all the way up if
there you go.
If you're at a nitro field.
All right, Gravy. Your favorite switch assignment, if you have one.
Emergency battery reject or eject. That would be a fun switch.
Mine does that on its own whenever I hit the tree stump.
Well, I talked about this at NAW with a couple people actually while we were working on Drunk Jet. Oftentimes you'll find those jets are the models that are sold with a ridiculous channel count.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And it'll be strange stuff. And one of them inevitably on the really high models is pilot eject, to eject the cockpit. And it's not like, the guy pops out and it's like a G.I. Joe parachute. It's just the cockpit, the whole top pan.
Right.
But I always thought if you're going to do that, it should have the ESC attached to it, so that when it ejects, you just don't have control anymore. That's what made sense to me. That would be a really, I don't know that I would use the switch, but that would be the way to be.
Yeah. Well, we try not to put anything on a switch that will make you lose control of your aircraft.
We would set it up on the wireless trainer so someone else would be able to have control over that switch.
Yeah.
Just for
first.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I got my first hobby grade RC vehicle, it was actually that Traxxas Rustler. And hobby grade. Ooh, burn. Don't hit me up, Traxxas.
Yeah, right.
Now, actually, I really want one of those XO ones. I want one of those so bad. Anyway, that was my first vehicle, and I had a 3-channel radio. I was like, it's a 2-channel. What would you possibly do with the 3rd channel? It just never occurred to me that there were, nitro vehicles that would need it and other things,
Right, yeah.
But I spent probably 2 days online trying to figure out what in the world would you do with the 3rd channel on this thing.
For the shoots, man.
But there are a lot of, that's where you start getting into some really neat stuff people have put on their cars and airplanes, though. That's when I started to fall in love with the strange stuff. Airplanes doing weird stuff. And then on the low end, you're talking about like candy drops.
Yeah, right.
But on the high end, I've seen just all kinds of strange accessories built for these things.
It falls right into like scale stuff where you could do lights, like nav lights, landing lights.
Or landing gear, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And that's fun, too. Like on my 47 we mentioned earlier, a lot of the fun in flying that thing is you taxi it out and then you put the flaps down and, you take off and then you're doing your flaps and you got the switches for the landing gear and everything. There's a real process. It's not just hit the throttle, pull up and go fly for a while. You kind of have things you can do.
Yeah, it immerses you into the whole flight experience a little more than, hitting the throttle and going, which is what I do. Yeah, I mean, so let's move into, some of the more, I guess, illustrious or, the little more sophisticated type stuff that you could do with switches, Well, we were talking about coupling, and that kind of stuff. Or I know some people put throttle curves, different, obviously, the high rates, low rates, and stuff like that. So what would be something, any of you, that would just, something maybe your most sophisticated switch assignment?
I've got one for you for that.
Okay.
Flying giant scale 3D. You touched on it briefly. You're talking about throttle curves. I had a setup on that 35% 260 that when I was in quote unquote 3D mode, I actually used flight modes for this, but when I was in 3D mode, meaning, maneuvers past the point of stall, changed the throttle curve so it smoothed it out about around mid-range. So when the stick was at center, I knew I was going to be hovering there. Okay. But then I flattened the curve around mid-range. So any movement around mid-range was just, equivalent to a quote unquote click or two of throttle, which helped stabilize the hovers, made it a little easier so you weren't getting rapid throttle transitions. But in addition to that, I kind of cheated because that plane was a little interesting in a hover. You constantly had to hold aileron to hold a steady hover. And occasionally I would let that slip. So when I went into 3D mode, that was my vertical, hanging on the prop mode. I went ahead and mixed in the aileron needed to hold it in a steady hover, and then also mixed in the rudder that I needed to keep the nose pointed upright. So basically I could get that, go ahead and come down the runway, back the throttle off, pull full elevator, snap it up into a hover, go up to mid stick and hit that switch, that flight mode switch, all in one smooth move. And it basically would hover hands off with no gyros or stabilization at that point, other than, if you had a little wind or whatever. But it reduced my pilot workload. Getting that all set up, however, took literally a full 4 weekends, 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, each weekend of flying and tweaking the mixes to get it right.
I bet it did. Yeah.
But once it was done, it was, like I say, it was a hands off. You could pop into a hover and take the radio at that point in your left hand and hold it out beside you, and the plane would sit there as long as the wind wasn't blowing.
Well, gee, Timmy, it sounds like your radio's flying the airplane for you.
Pretty much was at that point, with the mixes set up. But the nice thing about, like I said, it reduced the pilot workload, which was great because at the time I was terrified of doing Harrier maneuvers with that plane because, that's a lot of money. Hovering's one thing because with the nose pointed straight up, you nail the throttle and it's going to climb. But you get into a Harrier and one wrong move and you go nail the throttle and you've just pulled it straight into the ground wide open.
Right. They have a habit of rolling over on one side or the other, dropping a wing and just
real quick. And doing that and getting it stable in a hover let me transition over into a Harrier with a little more confidence. And then it was a real simple switch flip to go into, I actually had multiple flight modes, but I would go into another mode that kept my throttle curve like that, but took out the aileron mix and the rudder mix. So once I had established a Harrier, I could flip into just basically that throttle curve mode and then had full normal quote unquote control over the airframe. So
bonus tip, if anybody out there's trying to learn how to do some Harrier flight, if you can fly inverted well, it's actually a lot easier to learn that inverted than it is, what would you say? Verted?
Mm-hmm. Non-verted.
But if you're capable of flying inverted, it puts the rudder more in open air. I got that advice when I was trying to learn how to, just fly 3D in general, and I never got really good in Harrier flight, but the best I could do is inverted, and it really does make a big difference.
Show title: We Can Fly Verted.
We can fly verted. I like it.
Oh,
I'm not gonna act like I was here for that whole thing. I did have to step away. So great. Yeah, that was awesome, King.
Well, and I'll tell you another one that comes in really handy, and this works for sport planes too.
Okay.
Knife edge mixes. If you roll a plane into knife edge, chances are, unless, and it doesn't matter what it is, I've seen, some of the straightest, most amazing stick-built planes in the world do it, all the way down to ours. All aircraft tend to pull either towards the canopy or push towards the gear.
Yep.
And you also tend to get a little bit of a roll coupling. A knife edge mix to straighten all that out makes all the difference in the world. And
that's one of the, well, I don't guess maybe one of that is the mix that I learned this on that we're talking about now, was a knife edge mix on my slick.
Yeah. Yep. And it's, no shame in using it. You roll into a knife edge, and it just, as you're about to make that transition to 90 degrees, pull that mix in and the plane becomes stable, and then you can bring it right down on the deck and you don't have to worry about it doing anything funky. And you just got to remember, when you're climbing back up, you either give it more top rudder or roll out of it and pull up. And something I found that I did, especially on that big extra, was a lot of times I flew with that knife edge mix on all the time, because what I saw it exhibit in a knife edge flight, it was also exhibiting to some degree in a standard, upright, flight attitude. I just didn't notice it because I wasn't seeing it from the top down. Does that make sense?
Wouldn't it not do it though?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You're right. If it always did it, that's
So that's,
you hear people call it a P factor mix or a P mix. Is that right? Yeah. The way that I've done that in the past is to start with a flat turn. Just level flight, give it, not a ton of rudder. If you're on a 3D plane, that can stall anything, but give it some rudder to get it turning. And if it starts to drop a wing, pay attention to what you have to do with the ailerons and mix that in. Once you get it comfortable with a flat turn, you'll find a lot of times that the knife edge is just as nice, because it's the exact same problem. You're just kind of at a different angle.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then, of course, like you alluded to, Kat, the aileron rudder mix, if you're not comfortable flying the rudder, and, while I think we've beat that horse into the ground, fly that left stick, it takes a while to get to that point where you're comfortable with it. Don't be afraid to do a rudder aileron mix. When you add aileron, it feeds in rudder. You just got to work out your percentages, especially though, if you're flying something like a Cub or a Taylor Craft, something like that. And you can tell if you go to make a turn with no rudder input and the nose seems to be hanging high in that turn, if the nose never comes around and follows the plane cleanly, and I know it sounds weird to hear it, but if you ever see it happen, it'll make perfect sense, because the nose looks like it's just up there, and it's not following the direction the plane's flying. Then you need to add a little rudder to that. And you can either do that by flying the plane, or you can add a little mix in there and let the radio do the work for you. And that's a really easy one. That's a simple one to start out with. And unless you get the rudder mix backwards, there's not a whole lot of chance of anything really bad going wrong with the airplane, with that one.
Yeah. And remember, if that nose is pointing up, everything's working harder than it has to.
Yeah.
That affects a lot of different things, not just, beauty. Battery life. It's a little harder. So
people say that an airplane has a weight to it. It flies heavy or whatever. Obviously you can't really feel the weight, but something about flying an airplane makes you think, oh man, it feels heavier. It feels light in the nose or something.
Yep.
When you make one of those turns where you should be coordinating it and you're not, you'll feel it. You'll know it's wrong.
Yep.
You're looking at the airplane and you just can't. Why isn't it doing it? It feels like it's ready to fall out of the air at any moment. Just kind of not in the right place. It feels funky, and you'll definitely know it. Just go, to know now that the problem is you need to coordinate the turn. That's the problem. It took me a while to figure it out. I was like, why is this? It feels really wrong, and it took me a while to. It's because I'm flying like a dum-dum.
If you're fortunate enough to know somebody who's a full scale pilot that is willing to take you for a flight, ask them to take you for a flight and do an uncoordinated turn. You'll understand what the airplane's doing very quickly, and you'll be able to kind of recognize it on your aircraft.
That's uncomfortable.
It's pretty obvious if you know what you're looking for, but if you're new to it, you may not quite get that. Hey, that's not the way it's supposed to fly. I bet you there's probably some stuff on YouTube on flying coordinated turns as well. This conversation went a little bit differently than I thought, so I hadn't really.
No.
Well, wait a minute. That's pretty much every week, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, well,
it's all good though.
What kind of switches was he expecting?
Yeah.
Hickory.
Hickory switch. Nice. So yeah, lots of switches and different things you can do with them. And I guess the whole thing is when you talk to a lot of the older pilots, they're going to tell you you're cheating, or you even feel that way, or I'm having to flip the switch, put in a little rudder to keep my nose up on my knife edge. But you know what? The guy, the pro at the field's not doing it. You know, he can just do it. Well, you know what? Don't worry about that. Flying at the field, and it does take a little getting used to and focusing on this. Flying at the field is not a competition. It really isn't. The only person you're competing with is yourself. So if there is something on, that the radio will do that'll, increase or, build up the fun factor, I guess. If it'll make you do a knife edge better and you like it and it looks awesome, put it on a switch, man. Don't be scared because Joe's going to see you with, flip that switch. Oh, you're cheating. Because more than likely, if you went through his radio, you'll find a lot of the same things.
Or he doesn't know how to do that and doesn't want to say anything.
Possibly.
And something to keep in mind about that is just because you've got it on a switch doesn't mean you don't know how to do it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you figure out how to do it with the sticks, it'll be a whole lot easier to program it into the radio. You can't just go put random values in there. You could, but it takes longer, and you run the risk of tearing everything all to pieces. But you still learn how to do it, quote unquote, the right way. You're just automating the process and reducing your workload, which, in full scale aviation is important. The less workload the pilot has, the more, the more chance he has to recognize dangers. Sure. Same thing with model aviation.
And if you're not handing it to your friend and going, hey, do this for me, if you're taking it and just to kind of drive home what King's saying, if you're taking it and making the adjustments to the flight characteristics to make it, whatever better, knife edge, whatever, you already know what it's doing. It's not that you're just going in and finding this thing and I'm going to turn it to 10. You have the knowledge. You're just, increasing the likelihood that you're going to take your plane home in, one piece instead of in a bag.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making it funner for yourself, maybe because I'm a guy that, if I got to start thinking about too many things when I'm flying, I get nervous and I'm not enjoying it anymore. I've got to do this, I got to push that, flip that, and it just quits. But it becomes unfun to me. And it took me a long time to realize that. I mean, it really did. I wanted to be the bad to the bone pilot and, everybody, but that's not me. It's not who I am. And I finally realized I'm not having fun because I'm trying to be like these other people instead of enjoying what they're doing and then going and enjoying, the pilot that I am, which quite literally is just, flying trainers and that kind of stuff. I love my Fun Cub. I have just as much fun flying that thing in circles and touch and goes as, whoever does, hovering their edge or whatever it is.
The hobby has a way of teaching you the difference in what you like to see and what you like to do.
Absolutely. And anything that you can do to improve that experience, not only for yourself, but, even the people around you, I think you should take advantage of. And switches falls into that category, I do believe. So don't be scared to use them. Don't be scared to try something. And it doesn't, you can get friends at the field to help you learn how to do it to your radio or, whatever it is. And I know there's a plethora of knowledge right here on the show. So if you're struggling with a setup or something like that, feel free to email us at, you go to angleofattackpodcast.com, click on the contact us link, put it in there. Hey, I got a question about my switches. And I'm sure one of the knowledgeable people that do this show wouldn't mind responding. And I am going to have to say I'm a little disappointed because Duck wasn't here. Because I promise there are switch things that you can do with helicopters that would probably blow my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys could have probably put some of that stuff in there, but I know he's got a lot of experience, I guess, in the helicopter thing, the whirly birds. And I missed old Duck.
Yeah. Well, I know Chris and Bobby used to talk about that. They would set up, a high head speed and a low head speed kind of setup for their helicopters.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got you got a 3-position switch that you set for take off and then
idle
up and then that's when you're able to do the inverted hover stuff. So
Right.
there's a lot of programming on the radio.
Yeah, I mean,
side
we
for
joke about it a lot.
noise.
But for those of you who may not realize it, and I didn't to begin with, so don't feel bad. You, I almost said you're as smart as me, but that would be like the worst insult ever. But helicopters, that stick on the left is not throttle. On some of them it is, I guess. But when you get to the upper echelon of flying, yeah, your throttle is literally on a switch.
Yeah, in the way we as fixed wing pilots think about it.
Yeah. So I mean, you got collective on your throttle
Right.
positioning. So
I mean, it does increase throttle as you increase pitch, but it's more complex. It's not just
right.
It's just not speeding up the motor.
But it's the same thing we were talking about a while ago. It's a coupling thing. Yeah. You have several different things happening at the same time on the same stick or switch.
And really, the governor is there really to help keep that throttle setting, keep that head speed in the same spot, right? Because you want that head speed to stay regardless of your blade pitch on a helicopter. So, and you can think of quadcopters as a fixed pitch helicopter, really. So you're adding throttle, spinning the motor faster, but on a collected pitch helicopter, you're right. It really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the throttle. It has more to do with the pitch of the blades.
Yeah. And just glancing at chat right quick, I did see where you're doing it wronger. He has been around me when I've flown a couple of times, so he said the most important switch is the throttle cut. And
that's the off switch, isn't it?
That's
the off switch, right?
I think so. No. But that could lead us to fail safes. But anyway, yes, a throttle cut, especially on things that you can't just drag a throttle down, and at least bring it back down to a low speed. Throttle cut can be very, very, very important. And I know on quadcopters, multi-rotors, it's a good thing to have as well. And I think, and honestly, they call it armed, disarmed, same thing.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a good one. That's definitely one you need to hamburger. Oh crap, switch. Yeah, no, that's the one in the middle. That's all right, guys. Anything else you want to bring in with switches, or did Francisco have a switch that he likes to use on his aircraft? Maybe.
I wanted to say, related to our tip this week, those switches aren't anything super special. Mm-hmm. Their size is somewhat different than industry switches, but you don't have to buy that switch from your radio manufacturer necessarily. You can find those things in other places if you're in a pinch. And they're really simple to replace. That's probably the only thing you're really going to open a radio to do. If everything goes the way it should, because a switch is really easy to break. They're kind of thin.
Yeah.
If something's going to break, it's probably a switch, and it's really not a big deal to replace.
It's not, and it's a good way for you to maybe even broach the whole aspect of repairing stuff. And if you try to get the switch from your manufacturer, sometimes they don't sell them anymore, so you can find them like Gravy said. But even if you do get it from your manufacturer, it saves you the hassle of having to pack it up, ship it, wait for them to repair it, and then get it shipped back to you while the whole time you're on the ground.
I do have a question that one of the Tims may answer.
Okay.
Cathead may know, but I doubt it because I haven't experienced it. I don't know that you would either.
I doubt it too.
The way the switches work, if you adjust the trims for that particular channel, it's I guess a little more advanced thing, or the settings depending on your radio. As you switch into the different positions of the switch, it sends out a different PWM signal, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Can you replace that switch with a potentiometer?
Yes.
And have it send out a variable?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of radios have a potentiometer on them, but it's not uncommon either to move a switch or change a switch from this to that or whatever.
Yeah. You if it's a 3-position switch is the easiest, 3-position switch is the easiest one to replace with a pot, because all you're doing there is think about what a potentiometer is. You got 3 leads on potentiometer, you got your center wiper, and then you got your 2 extents, and all that switch is doing is instantly going to each extent. So you could put a potentiometer in its place. And It may get a little interesting depending on the radio and how flexible the programming is as to how it would, how it would integrate into what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you could,
if you're going to do it on a multi-rotor, a lot of that can be done in the flight controller.
right.
It's just a matter of using it as an analog input instead of a digital.
Exactly.
And because of the way it modulates that signal and the way it changes, like if you hooked it up and you read the signal off the receiver end, for example, that information, the way it changes, could be controlled analog.
Right.
And it's just a matter of, and it seemed like that digital switch may actually take an analog input the way it works. And I just didn't know if it actually would or not.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it is possible, if not.
And
pretty much
the flip of that, the reverse of that was really popular on the, and still is with the guys that fly the Taranis a whole lot. They would replace one of the potentiometers with a 6-position switch with a resistor divider network, and the sole purpose for that was for flying Pixhawk and APM controllers, so you could have those 6. So you're not sitting there sweeping a pot going, okay, I think I'm in fly-by-wire, but I'm not sure. You had a solid switch click.
Yeah.
So you knew 100%, all right, I'm in position 3. Position 3 is fly-by-wire A.
Wow.
So you could go both ways. So
yeah, and I think it's going to depend on the radio a little bit too. If you're thinking about doing that, check into it and see what's out there on your radio.
Well,
It's not something I've considered actually doing. It's just something I've wondered about before.
well,
And while Tim was talking, it just occurred to me that the programming would have to be a little bit. I bet you could do it with a Open Sky or like a Taranis or something like that.
Yeah.
Open TX. But I don't think you could do it with Futaba or Spectrum or any of those first party type stuff.
Well, I mean, the switch just has a thing coming into it, and then when you switch it, you change what the thing is coming out. Right? So, I mean,
Yeah. And that's why I'm a little leery to say, yeah, you can do that. My guess is that what you would end up doing is just being able to, and you would end up turning the pod up so much that you end up being having it turned off. Essentially, there's not going to be enough current sink there to make it. So it might be like that, and maybe it's maybe it's capable of reading that resistance a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, there's several things like that. Like if you could get into the programming for the radio, there's no reason in my mind why every 2-position switch couldn't be a 3-position switch or more.
that gets a little more complicated because what I've typically seen on 2-position switches, unless they're on, if it's a true 2-position on-off switch, a single pole, single throw switch, that is tied to a digital input on the processor. Now, if it's a 2-position, a single pole double throw without the center off, still a 3-lug switch, then, and again, this all goes back to what input it's tied to on the processor. If they're still tied to digital inputs on the processor, then putting a potentiometer on it won't work. If it's tied to an analog input and where you're just maxing the voltage out, then you could replace it with a potentiometer, provided again that the radio programming will support it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because the programming might actually see it as
yeah, it's either on or off is all it looks for.
it might
Versus
be
a variant.
switch E.
Right.
And then when you wire it in, you're basically just wiring in a second switch E.
Mm-hmm.
That's 3-throw or 3-position.
Right.
So if you put another potentiometer in there, it could just read it as a second potentiometer on that same channel.
Mm-hmm.
That's goofy. Because, whoa, yeah, I just overloaded a little bit there.
You overheat and have to reboot?
Yeah. I might have to reboot here soon. So, no, that's a really good question though. I think we should try that on your radio. Anything else? Rombo, you've been quiet. Do you have anything?
No, I've just been sitting back listening. I was thinking about how would you guys go about, because on the X10, there's a plethora of 3-position switches. I kind of wish there was at least one, maybe 2 more 2-position switches. Because sometimes you just want that, either that on or off. You don't want to have to program. Well, if it's in the middle or the back position, it's on. But if it's towards me all the way, it's off. That's what I'm having to resort to on a couple.
I'll
of
tell you
my
what I
things.
do on that.
Uh-huh.
I use the not function, and just don't worry about it. If I just need a 2-position switch,
Uh-huh.
I'll set the whatever I'm looking for, or whatever I'm doing. I'll set it up as when the switch is not in, like SA for example. SA not down activates whatever I want. So SA down, which is towards me,
Yeah.
is
So
not
basically
activated,
making
and
two
either of the
positions
other
on.
2 positions automatically turn it on. It doesn't matter if I go to the first click or the second click; it's on. Period.
Right.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
it's easier programming that way too, because you're doing 1 line instead of writing 3 lines.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, you're using the not function
Or you
basically.
just not be a pansy and switch a little harder and go through that middle. Like, I mean, you're fussing about having to switch too hard. Things we put up with around here. First world
Okay.
problem.
First world
Gosh,
problem.
cat head.
I know. Fingers get sore. Look past that middle position.
Don't worry, Ronbo. I'll put 2 cans of tuna in his mouth tonight.
There's a show title.
Oh, you should be around for pre-show. You'd have some idea what we were talking about.
Yeah, no doubt.
Oh yeah. I was here. I heard it.
No, I'm talking about the people listening.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or maybe you don't.
Because they're sitting around going,
Really don't.
cans of tuna in his mouth? What is that? Joke live.
Yeah. So
Moving on.
we're right along from the tuna.
Oh, my week is complete. I got to moving on from now.
Right. Yep.
I was needing that.
What is it?
What is it?
Not Jeepers, but Jeezy Pete's. I haven't got a Jeezy Pete in forever, so
Because I've never said it.
I'm going to push for that in the next couple weeks. That's going to be my target before Christmas. I'm going to get a Jeezy Pete's.
Not out of me.
That's going to happen.
Did I mention I'm not going to be on the next 2 shows?
Yeah, have a recording. All right. Well, no, I think that was a fairly good show, guys. I learned a couple things and had some fun talking about them. So you can't be scared of the switches, right?
And don't be scared of fixing these things, too.
Yep. And
If you broke it, fix it.
that's it. And we got to get out of here because Nav's got a deer to clean. So
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Go track it in the middle of the night. So.
Thanks for tuning in,
boy.
guys. Downloading one more time or tuning in live. However you did it, we appreciate it. And you guys don't forget to go check us out, the website, and find out the different ways you can get a hold of us at angloattackpodcast.com. And until next week, fly hard and switch often. And that's a wrap.
Sweet often.
Sweet often.
I don't know. The tuna whispered it to me.
You did. Hey, Nav, I was going to say, did you throw the deer in the back of the car like on Tommy Boy?
No.
That was a classic scene.
Yeah, Lion Boy hit a deer one night and we cleaned that sucker.
Yeah, I'm serious. I couldn't see it. I didn't look real hard for it, but it's sort of a residential area. I was afraid I was going to walk into somebody's backyard.
I mean, we know you didn't see it. You hit it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw it. I just kept going.
Kristen was riding behind me one day coming home from her parents' house. And it's actually just one big, long, straight road at that time between our 2 places. But there was literally nothing in between except open fields. And that's just the best place ever.
You said it was long and straight at that time. What they do, install curves?
No, we moved.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, that's just where the deer love to run out in front of you. Every time the trees kind of approach the road at the edge of a field, that's where they're going to be, right behind where those trees are.
Yep.
You sound like you need some of those bumper-mounted deer whistles.
Oh, whatever. I got a moose deflector on the car. I'm waiting for a chemical to turn the freaking frogs gay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm after. It's the chemtrails. But Deer jumped out in front of her and she
Again.
hit that thing running 60 in my Astro, and it didn't even move the bumper very. It like moved the bumper 6 inches.
Love it.
And then I was like, screw that, man. My brother-in-law was like, we're cleaning this. I was like, you can clean this. I'll help you get it in the truck. It was. She got an 8-point in bow season.
You forgot Phenomena.
No. That needs to be the closing song.
I think we got a good take on it. Oh, you talking about the recorded actual song?
Yeah, that needs to be after our typical outro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have your vocal separate from the Tim?
I think we still got it where we can do that.
Yeah.
I know Kat's still got the original outro music. And I think it may be in the AOA share drive.
I'm just thinking if your vocal that's laid over that outro is
oh, that's not good, Phenomena.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
Let's see what we
good.
can come up with.
That's not good. Dun, 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 dun. That's not good. Dun, 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 dun. That's not good. Dun, 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 dun,
Oh my God.
dun, dun.
All right, I hate to, but I got to run.
I do too. It's getting late and it's cold out here. So
Did you say you have the runs?
Yep.
yeah.
I gotta
go,
got the runs.
Fancy picker. I did order that that inductive heater, and I've got a power supply for it, and I'm going to be putting together something. So if it works out well, I'll be able to share the project with you if you're interested. It's got nothing to do with RC, but it's got something
to do with something else we do. Because
with Hunting Creek.
I'm gonna tell you right now, there was some brass that needed to be annealed because he split cases like crazy.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to know about that too, because I bought some of that brand ammo specifically for my Mosin, and I bought it because it's reloadable.
Yeah, and Craig mentioned too that part of it he thinks is well. You see the chamber on this particular rifle, and that kind of adds a little to it. But
yeah. So I don't know. It's all.
God, it's a sweet shooter though. It's a dang tack driver.
I like that rifle. Is that the same one that
was
out there?
The dressed up Woodstock one.
The
really pretty late model for